thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
You must be the busiest guy I know.
I'm the most nervous guy right now.
You shouldn't be nervous. I'm so fascinated by your story, and I'm really excited to have the opportunity to kind of go into it a little bit with you. But before we dive into the backstory, you know, we were talking with Alvaro Barrington earlier about what it takes to be a great artist.
Yep.
I'm curious, what does it take to be a great DJ on a global scale in a global culture like the one we live in now? Like, what is it? What is that?
Wow. I have great respect for Alvaro. Really enjoyed the talk earlier. There's two things for me. To be a DJ in South Africa, it's one of the toughest things because almost every DJ is as amazing. To be a DJ on the global level is way more tougher because I come from a continent that is, or was, maybe still is, not seen as how it truly is. If you Google a picture of Africa, like on your phone right now, you know, it's not going to be the most positive picture you see. So to leave the continent and be able to be great outside, there's a lot of work that one had to do, like internally and externally. The more I was growing as a brand, fashion played a very big role for me, how I'm seen and how I walk into the room. In every show that I play, I was very conscious of how I present myself. And the bigger the brand, the more intentional I was in terms of like visually, how do I look, how do I speak, how do I present myself. Totally different from the DJ from South Africa that I was before. So it took a lot of work.
You said now that, you know, the way, if we Googled Africa or African culture on our phones and the way Africa really is, and I say this as the son of immigrants from Africa.
Yes.
So I share that perspective with you because when the image that we have of Africa, or the image that Westerners or people outside of Africa have,
yeah.
What's the gap? Like, what's the way that you see it versus the way that it's seen?
Oh, there's a lot of difference. I mean, the biggest lie about the continent is if you look at the picture of the globe, you know, Africa is made to be smaller. And that's the truth, that's a fact. That's number one, how we are made to be seen. Just the continent of Africa. If you look at the globe, it's made smaller, but it's bigger than what it actually is. I'm not even talking about its talent, its taste, its fashion, its music, its culture. I'm just talking about how the entire continent is made to look, you know, which is a bigger picture. And everything else that comes with it, you know, we have to work 10 times harder, you know. We don't have opportunity. We have the talent, we have, and this is across the board, not just in music, in everything that we do. We import more than we export. I have great interest in the fashion world. There's something that we're working on. And it's common knowledge that Africa is it's a $31 billion industry today, projected to be 50 billion by 2030. But still, we import more than we export.
Yeah.
And I'm one of the few exports of the continent. And the idea is something that I'm working on every year. If you look at my residencies across the world, in Ibiza, I bring more African DJs on the island. Residency in Italy, where I do Fibich, residency in Greece. all the residencies that I work in, I try to bring more African DJs. Not just because I'm from Africa, because I know how much we lack opportunity, and I know how much we are ready for the global platform. And what often happens is the world will then create subgenres or categories for African people. At the Grammys, instead of Tyler from South Africa, who has the biggest song in the world, instead of giving her a #1 pop award, they will create a new genre or category where it's Best African.
It's like we were hearing earlier with the chefs, right? When you're a
Yes.
chef coming from
Yes.
the global south or a
Yes.
different culture, they want to put a label on you.
Yes, so I've experienced this as an artist. You know, I once received a big award in LA, the BETs, and at the time I was staying in LA and we were invited to this award ceremony, and me staying there at the time, it was such a big thing for me. You know, I was very excited. South African, going to the BETs, who knows, you know, I'm gonna see Beyonce, I'm gonna see all the big stars, you know, on the weekend. And then during the week, we were told the African categories were only gonna be on Friday.
Not televised.
Not televised, alone. So we attended the ceremony on Friday, and it was just us, you know, and we were all given our awards on Friday, and we were not invited on the main show on Saturday. You know, but if you watch the show from Africa, they managed to edit the show so that you see us receiving the awards on TV on the same day. But we could not attend the show with everyone else.
You weren't actually invited into
You know
the
what I'm
room.
saying? So that's how we've been slowly slotted into the system. And the Grammy Award that you're speaking about was one of my biggest ways to fight that category, where I created an album with an intention of being nominated or being categorized with my peers. So I worked with my peers. You know, I have David Guetta on the album, who was also nominated. I have Diplo, who was also nominated on the same category. I featured the world's greatest musicians on the album, because I was very intentional about landing at the right place and not being categorized on any African genre. You know,
And so to do that, did you need that adjacency with those Western DJs in order for them not to put you in that box? Is that what you're saying?
No, it was just me being intentional about song selection, the tempo, the features, you know, because music is such a universal thing. There's no language in a piano. You know, a piano doesn't speak Zulu. You know, it plays notes. It doesn't matter who's playing it. So I was very intentional about what I'm trying to do with that album. And when I got the nomination, you know, I felt very rewarded. Even before the award, at that point, I didn't even care about the award. The fact that I was not categorized as an African DJ on an African category, you know, I felt like my voice was heard on a global scale where it belonged. And that's what drags us, makes us slow as African. We are not given an opportunity on the same level as the world players. You know, any African artist who comes up, they will create a category. I mean, there's been so many artists from here, from the UK, like Sam Smith came. They didn't create a British category.
Brit pop category.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that slows us down a lot, you know, whether it's in art, music, or fashion.
Your personal story is a remarkable one. And, you know, growing up in South Africa in the apartheid era,
Yeah.
and at the time when, you know, that era came to a close,
Yeah.
and then experiencing life post-apartheid.
Today, yeah.
What was it like for you to experience that massive, almost over, like a shift? Like,
Yeah.
Talk to us about that time in South Africa.
It's very complex, even today, just to live together. You know, when Nelson Mandela came out of jail and he became the president, the word that was used to promote South Africa was called a rainbow nation. You know, this was his vision, you know, a vision of like equality, everyone's the same, we're all different people, black, brown, you know, whatever color. And which I think was the most beautiful thing you can see. This man stayed in jail for 27 years, and he came out and he was preaching equality and peace. But in reality, the country is still suffering. You know, we silently are suffering because we still don't see each other the same way. There's still fear from both sides. And there's so much positivity, but negativity overwhelms the positivity, you know, because we haven't dealt with the truth. You know, and I speak about it openly. I remember reading about how in Australia, there was a formal apology to the Aborigines, like a formal apology to say, we are apologizing for what happened to your ancestors. And I feel like in South Africa, that's what's needed. What happens instead is people say, no, that was the past, get over it. And which I think everyone is working towards that, but I feel like the real what could bring real change is being outspoken about what happened in the past. Because then we're dealing with the issues in the right way. You know, today we have kids that are young, that don't know the history, that are very positive, that are the Rainbow Nation, but the truth is still hidden. And you almost see change when they turn 18 and they start knowing the truth, because no one speaks about it openly. And then they start looking at each other different, you know, and it's constantly going to keep happening.
Yeah, until
we speak about it openly. And it's not taboo to speak about it because it is the past.
Yeah.
You know, so I live in a very, very positive country, but it still has wounds.
The night that Nelson Mandela was released from prison was also a defining moment for you in your personal life.
Yeah.
Can you take us back to that moment and what happened? Because it changed your life forever that evening.
I was 13, about to turn 14.
13.
Yeah. And we lived with our grandmother, who was extremely strict. And it was all over the news that Nelson Mandela is coming out of prison the following day. And there was basically tribulations all around the country. You know, it was all over radio, TV, and what happened in the township where I was staying, people were going to camp overnight. So we lived not far from a local stadium. And so people started singing, kind of like going through all the streets, gathering up in numbers so that they can go camp in the stadium, which was near my house. And this group of people came past my house, and we all came out to see. And
the parade was going
yes,
in front,
like right in front, and we didn't live on a big main road, but it came right in front of our house. And me and my cousins, we quickly like went in, because I love music. So they were singing. I went in, and my cousins went back, and I didn't go back. It was around 8, 9 at night. I didn't go back, and I just kept going with the crowd to a point where I was now scared to go back home because it was late. It was going midnight, 1 o'clock. We were still going. And when we were a few meters away from the stadium, like on the main road, we just had like a noise. I personally had a big noise, like something was like a big bang, and I was lights out, you know, and I think a few seconds or maybe a minute, you know, I gained consciousness, people were screaming, and basically what happened is a taxi, later what happened, a taxi came and bashed onto the singing crowd. And they say he intentionally switched off the lights so we couldn't see. And in high speed, he just came in the front and rammed through the crowd. And I was with my friends, and we were not in the front. You know, I was with my two friends, and, you know, lights out, and then cars came, ambulances to pick us up, take us to the hospital. And I remember I got to the hospital, I saw my friends, they were also injured. So we got injured, and I suffered an injury called brachial plexus, which is the damage of the nerves. So I got a dislocated shoulder. And I don't think it was from the impact of the car, I think it was from the impact of the people pushing back. And so we were in hospital, early hours of the morning. They couldn't figure out what to do with me, and they sent me home. And I remember getting back home in pain, sitting on the couch, watching the television, and Nelson Mandela was coming out of jail that same few hours later, which was a big thing for the world, you know, and for the country. And in the stadium where we were going, it was now full capacity. I could hear it from my house, and the singing and the tribulations. So his release out of jail marked a beginning of a different journey for me. As a kid who was 14 years old, who loved music, who had dreams of becoming something in music. At that age, I wasn't clear about what I wanted to do, but I was already in a music class in school. I was very much dedicated to music, and so that was basically the first day of the beginning of Black Coffee.
What changed for you after that in terms of, you know, you've lost use of your left arm now as you're paralyzed?
Yeah.
What happened in your mind after that happened?
I went through a lot. I mean, I was a kid, you know. Most of the time I would ask myself, why? You know, why me? Why would God do this to me? You know, it just didn't make sense for me as someone who I thought I had everything figured out. You know, I found my love for music very early in my life, which I knew, like, music was my thing. And it's crazy because at that age, I was kind of like a big deal as a DJ, underage. And so and my cousin and his friend had a mobile DJing sound system. And I think around 12, 13, I started following them around, and I was very curious, and I started learning how to DJ. And so they would come to my house, speak to my grandmother to ask if they can take me to the gigs, and they would do like 21st birthday, like graduation parties, and, you know, which fascinated her, you know, like, why are you picking him up? You know,
they saw something in you?
Yeah, I was, you know, I was quite talented in music very early. And then this thing happened. So I was very, very confused as to where to go. You know, in music class, then it was a little bit different for me because we had a piano in class, and all of a sudden I was excluded in certain exercises in class. But I had a very understanding teacher, you know, who knew how to manage the situation. But yeah, I went through many different phases of my life, as a kid, asking myself so many questions. And eventually, I used to do physiotherapy after school, like 3 times a week. After school, I would go see a physiotherapist, and they would do some stretches. And eventually, I came home and I told my grandmother, because as a kid, I expected to see results, and I used to have dreams about it. I wake up, I'm like, oh, I woke up and I was fine, and nothing was happening. And I told my grandmother, I was like, can I please stop with physio, because I'm not seeing any change. And it was making me anxious and, I don't know, it was, my depression was becoming worse as a child, And she understood and I stopped physio. And I think stopping physio helped me to kind of like ignore everything that was negative about me. And I literally blocked, the accident. I blocked that experience for many, many years. And I remember the first time I spoke about it was probably 2007 when I released my second album. Because I went with the music and I released my first album without talking about it. Because I didn't want people to see me as that artist. I didn't want pity, I wanted to come in the industry and be accepted as a musician who has passion and love for music. And after the release of my second album, I was doing a radio interview and I spoke about it for the first time. And I spoke about it because I felt like I was ready to have conversations about it. And I've been speaking about it till today.
So after the accident, you find a way of kind of pursuing this budding interest in music, and you start DJing in South Africa first. What was the moment that enabled you to go global, to be the South African export?
There used to be I don't know what to call it, a concept that was done by Red Bull. It used to be called Red Bull Music Academy, where they would invite different producers and DJs from around the world. Basically, you need to go online and apply, and if you're lucky, you'll be chosen, and they will fly you wherever they're doing the academy every year. And I applied for it in 2003, I think, and it was in Cape Town in my country. And I was chosen, and so I attended the Red Bull Music Academy, and we were about, I think, 40 different students. And being there for me changed my perspective because I was there with other DJs and producers from around the world, and I was playing them the music that I've been making, and most of the songs were in my language, and some they were not understanding. I had to translate a lot of stuff, and that was the first thing I wanted to fix about production, to know how to make a global sound without limiting myself because of the language. And I was very intentional about when I can use my language and when I cannot, depending on the releases. So, long story short, one of the lecturers there was Hugh Masekela, a South African legendary artist, may so rest in peace. I was sitting on this side of the room and he was talking, and we were taking notes and singing for the first time in the room, and I listened to a lot of the stuff that he was saying. And after the academy, then I started working on my album, and I reached out to him, and he agreed to be on my album, and my first single was with him, and he agreed to do a music video. And so I can say being in that academy helped me look at the world different, and I was more intentional about how to approach a global scene and how to play for a global scene. Mm.
So you're now the man on the stage, speaking to lots of people like here and watching online. What's the advice that you offer young creatives who, they might be in Africa, or they might be in Indonesia, or they might be in some other country that's overlooked by kind of mainstream Western culture? Like, what advice do you have to offer to those young creatives who want to find their global voice?
Just listen to your voice. As an artist, we all have a voice, and it tells us what color palette to choose when we're painting. It tells us what genre of music do we choose as our medium, whether it's jazz or house music. And what happens is, over time, people come in and start dictating to you what voice you should use. And it doesn't matter, whether it's music or anything that you want to be. Just listen to that inner voice, because that voice is the voice that will make you the greatest. Listening to people sometimes can water down your ambitions and can change your direction, And I say this a lot because coming from the continent where I come from, we've looked outside a lot. We grew up watching American television thinking, that's the greatest country in the world. And that's where we all belong as Black people. They are the coolest, and over time traveling there and seeing the reception as someone who comes from the continent and seeing the respect they give me, I realized that actually we still have more stories to tell as people of the continent. We haven't even touched the surface when it comes to storytelling, our sound, our different cultures. For instance, in South Africa, we have 11 official languages. Just in my country alone, we have so many different cultures, and each culture comes with a different approach to language, to melody, different approach to singing itself. And we haven't even started touching, the surface when it comes to showcasing our talent. So we have a lot of story to tell, and we cannot allow anyone else, or you can't allow anyone else to tell sing your melody like this, or approach your art like this. So the message for me is listen to your voice and let your talent and your voice guide you.
Great. Thank you so much for being here.